The Joe Rogan Experience.
Do you do any training on machines, or is all your training essentially done on the road?
The running is all pretty much done on the road and the trails. I'll do like some mobility work and some strength work in the gym, and that's where I'll kind of go inside, I guess, for it. But yeah, I've used treadmills and stuff in the past, and I do use them from time to time. But usually, if I have the option to go outside, I'll do that. And I mean, I live in Phoenix, so it's it's sunny
Cold
most
days,
days.
70.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm there this weekend, actually.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You're at the Comerica?
Comerica Theater.
Nice.
Yeah, Friday and Saturday. I'm psyched.
Yeah.
I love Phoenix.
Yeah, it's the time of year to be there for sure.
Yeah, man. Right? What's the temperature there right now?
Probably maybe 65 or so.
I've been there before in the summer. In July when I used to
Yeah.
do Tempe Improv, and it was like fucking 120.
Well, and that's the funny thing too, because when I was training for that 100-mile 12-hour world record, it was through the summer because the race was in August. So my peak training was like 110 degrees some days. And the funny thing too is the Pettit Center where I did the race, it was actually built for speed skating and some hockey rinks. So they keep it at like 60 degrees.
Ooh, that's nice.
I remember one day when I was running, it was like one of the hottest days of the summer. I remember thinking like, I'm going to race literally at half this temperature.
Yeah.
So it's really funny when you see that, and I think I'm no expert at it by any means, but I think there's some pretty cool like studies and stuff that of the effects that happen when you are training in some of those extreme heats. Like what happens, for the way it was described to me, is it kind of simulates training at altitude to a degree. So who knows? Maybe
That
some
makes
of that
sense.
helps.
Well, it's similar to hot yoga, right? Mm-hmm. They're doing some studies at Harvard, I believe. I think it's Harvard. Someone was explaining the whole deal to me. This is not something that I read, but essentially what they're doing is they're trying to find out whether or not hot yoga, these 90-minute hot yoga sessions, replicate some of the known benefits of sauna. Because, obviously the temperature is not as hot. They keep it. The hot yoga place I go to, I think they keep it at 105 degrees versus sauna, gets much, much hotter than that. You're in like the 180s, which what I like. But the idea is that when your body is extremely stressed, when you're doing these poses and you're sweating like crazy, that your body core temperature rises basically to a similar level than if you were just sitting in a sauna. So you get a very similar response.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I try to remember that when it's the summer in Phoenix, so I don't get too miserable.
Bummed out by it. Yeah, you got to be doing yourself good. Kronk Gym, which is one of the most famous boxing gyms in history. Emmanuel Stewart, who was just a wizard of boxing, and he trained Tommy Hearns and some of the all-time greats of that era. He would crank the temperature, and this is in Detroit. They would crank the temperature up really hot, so you would go into that gym, and it would be that way, like for that specific reason, because he believed that it increased endurance.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff, but I'll still take January and February
for comfort. Now, what do you do in terms of like how do you hydrate yourself, and like what kind of durations are we talking about? Like, say if it's 110 degrees outside, 120. What was the hottest you ran at?
I think 110 is what I got up to, and I try to get out relatively early so that it's not like 110 from start to finish. So like if I get out, say at like 6 or 7 in the morning, it might be in the 80s, high 80s, and be working its way up so that like I'm finishing and it might be 110. For my key workouts, the way I structure my training usually when I'm kind of in peak is I'll do my biggest workout in the morning, and then I might go out and do like a second run that's like a little shorter or quite a bit shorter in most cases and really low intensity. And, then sometimes if it's the afternoon in Phoenix, that's when I would see like that 110. But I'm usually not out for more than like 45, 60 minutes for those. So hydrating is interesting because, I grew up in the Midwest, so I was very familiar with running in hot, humid stuff in the summer. And, the dry desert heat, though, it seems like you get thirsty a lot quicker and a lot more frequently. So one of the things I learned the first summer I was in Phoenix was knowing where the water fountains are and kind of planning your routes around that.
You drink out of public water fountains?
When I have to.
Do you worry about cooties?
I haven't gotten anything too miserable yet. In fact, I did a race earlier this year, I think it was in early June, called the San Diego 100. And it's got this spot in the middle of the course where the aid stations are a little further apart. There's like a 9-mile stretch and a 7-mile stretch. And I kind of mistimed how much water I did, so I filled up my water in a stream, and it was probably not an ideal spot.
Dude.
But I rolled the dice, and I didn't get anything bad. No, my thought during the race was, this is the mindset in the middle of one of these things, is like, well, if something really bad happens, it'll happen after the race. So I'll
definitely would, but it's really bad.
Yeah.
Giardia is rough. I've never had it, but the people that I know that have had it say it's really bad. But you could just bring a SteriPen.
Yeah.
But you can't really stop, huh?
Yeah, I mean, in a race, I wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
And what really helped for me was the situation is, since the race was on an indoor track, 400 and I think 42 and some odd meters, I was doing a lot of my big long runs on a 400-meter track.
Oh, okay.
So when I did that, I would just bring out like a cooler, and I'd have ice and water in there.
Just have it sit there waiting for you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, that makes sense. But when you do a lot of trail running, though, right?
I do some of that too. Yeah. Historically, I've done a lot more flat runnable stuff, but now that I'm out in Phoenix, I like to try to split the year into two halves and do some trail stuff in half the year, and then some like flatter road or track or runnable stuff in the second half of the year.
Do you bring water when you run trails? Do you bring like a backpack or something like that? Like one of those, what are
like
those
a pack?
things? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
With the tubes.
Yep.
What the fuck is that? Camelbacks.
Yeah, I don't usually use what they call like the bladder, which is the tube thing that you're talking about.
Those are nice, though.
They are, and you can pack a lot of water.
Yeah.
Usually, unless I'm going to be away from a potential stop long enough, usually what I'll do is I'll use the pack, but I'll have like smaller little like little flasks, soft flasks in there.
Oh, okay. So you bring those two that you like on the chest straps. I see a lot of people when they run with those. But you're rolling the dice with that. Like you got to know how much to sip.
Yeah,
you don't want to get greedy.
The pickup spots are for more. Run with friends.
Yeah. When I run with my dog in the summer, when it gets really hot, I bring a Hydro flask in a backpack, and I'm one of those collapsible dog bowls because I don't want him drinking out of puddles and shit.
Right.
And so. But that just having that extra couple pounds on your back, it makes a difference. You feel it.
Yeah, and that's why part of the reason why I try to go as minimal as I can with water if I can get away with it. Obviously, if I go out and do like a big loop where there's no potential stops, I'm going to have to carry it all from the beginning. But if it's a spot where I know like I can get to water every 5, 6, 7 miles, then usually I'll pack a little lighter and not be carrying as much at any one given time.
Do you hydrate up before you go?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the hardest things to really get right in Phoenix was just like kind of learning kind of how much you need to be hydrating like between sessions, because what I usually found out is I could go out and kind of neglect hydration for any one given like run or workout, but if I did that, then the next one I would probably pay for it. So for me, the big motivation to make sure I'm on top of hydration during any given run is because I know like if I don't, then the next one is going to potentially be miserable.
Yeah, man, I've done that before. That's a weird feeling trying to do anything when you're dehydrated. It's like you have a bad battery or something.
Yeah.
It's like everything's like, come on. Yeah. It's amazing how just normal everyday life, like you could feel like a little rundown and you barely notice it. But once you start physically exerting, once you start training, once you start doing something hard, that's when you become like really in tune with how you're screwing your body up. Like drinking, for instance. Like have a couple of drinks and then run. Like, oh God. You're like, well, this is what it's doing to my body?
Yeah.
I got to fucking stop drinking,
Yeah. I think I like drinking to thirst. That's usually what my gauge is, and I haven't really had any issues with that.
So there's no like strategy, like say I'm going to run 25 miles today. Let me drink X amount of liters of water before I go out.
No, before the run. Yeah, no. I try not to like do too much like kind of like preemptive hydrating, because I think what people oftentimes I think do then is they drink too much, and then that comes at the expense of your electrolytes too, because your body's going to excrete those. So if I find myself,
couldn't you just supplement?
You can, yeah, and I'll do a lot more of that, especially in the heat too. Just in general, is like having like electrolyte supplementation and things like that.
What do you use for your electrolyte supplementation?
I use a product called Hydro X mostly. It's like a powder that you can kind of mix in with your water by a company named X Endurance. They make these little tubes now too, where like, so if I'm running and I have like one bottle with some in it already, I can have these little like these little tubes that if I refill and want to put more in, I can just kind of take them out, pop it off, and pour that in. A lot of other people will use. You can make like little caps that You just like swallow it with your water, and it's got like the formulation of the different electrolytes in there kind of dialed in. And, I think that's a little more hit or miss as to like where people feel you need that. Some people tell you don't really need electrolytes at all. You just need to salt your foods and things like that, all the way to like you should be taking X number of these every hour.
Well, there's got to be science behind it, right? I mean, are you getting blood tests and finding out what your levels are pre and post workouts or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I haven't done any like post workout tests to say, other than I was part of the FASTER study, which was a study that looked at high carb and high fat athletes, and I think they were looking at some of that stuff too. And like anytime I've ever had a blood test done though, my electrolytes, like my sodium, potassium levels, have always been in range. So I haven't really tried to. It's one of those things then where it's like I'm probably not going to try to fix something that's not broken.